So I know we just got through that election results with Florida siding with Bush. So Bush is going to be president versus Gore. And he gets inaugurated in January. There had been information given from the Pentagon, given from of issues of terrorism. We've seen them in the Bush administration with what happened at the World Trade Center. But one of the most catastrophic things that happened in his administration was September 11th. We know 4 planes are hijacked, leaving the East Coast. And one of the things that was alarming that there was reported by the Pentagon is that a lot of people were taking flight lessons and learning about how to take off, but not how to land. And we're seeing that the planes were hijacked and they got access to the cockpit. And you have to understand at this time, like we look at airports today and you can't even get in unless you have a ticket. At this time, people could freely come in and out of airports. People like going into airports because you could duty-free purchase. But the terrorist basically had been planning this. And so we see 2 planes will crash into the World Trade Center. And so here's the World Trade Center right here. One crashes straight into the Pentagon, so that's the one over here. And the last one was actually on its way to DC, but the people of the plane commandeered it. And Al-Qaeda takes credit for all of these attacks. What this leads to immediately is a massive shutdown of all plane travel. Because they're fearful that there's other planes. And this is one of those days that everybody can remember where they are at when it occurred. And I know this was part of your interview. I was at UT at this time, and I just remember I was walking to class, and then I turned around to see the TV, and I was like, oh my gosh, what has just happened? And so this is one of those things that it was an attack on our foreign soil, and people were in disbelief. And some other images that came out at that time. So Bush speaks to the nation, and you have to understand that where Bush was at this time. Bush, when he hears of the attacks, he is in a classroom because he's supporting No Child Left Behind. And his security detail comes to him and they whisper to him, there has been an attack on American soil, and you see it on Bush's face. He sits there, but you have to understand he's also on TV. He doesn't want to get up and run out of the place because that would show that it was catastrophic. He sits, he continues through the lesson, gets through the lesson, and then leaves. He's very composed. But after that, he's going to declare a war on terror, authorizing the use of military to respond to the people who had these acts, the terrorists. He says anybody who's helped the terrorists had a hand in this, and they would be attacked as well. There's a huge amount of people who are killed in the attacks, and we know a lot more firefighters and paramedics and the police department will suffer as well for rescuing people and have a lot of respiratory problems in the near future. So we're sharpening our nails, getting ready for war. What will also be created is the Patriot Act. The Patriot Act is going to allow for the government to start investigating people. We will start actively monitoring. It's going to be a violation of habeas corpus because suspected terrorists will be thrown into jail without being told their rights. The terrorists are not guaranteed due process of law, which we know is with habeas corpus. There's a couple of agencies that are also created out of the Patriot Act. TSA, when you go into the airport, that they check your belongings, they check your stuff to create protection. And they also limit the amount of liquids you could have. The Department of Homeland Security to protect our borders as well is created. And all of this, the invasion of Afghanistan happens, and we see we're looking for Osama bin Laden. We know he doesn't die in the Bush administration. We know that that's in the Obama administration. We're trying to look for these terrorist cells and remove the Taliban from power. We also go into Iraq. and we're looking for weapons of mass destruction. None are found. Saddam Hussein is captured at this time. He does get 2 appointments, John Roberts and Samuel Alito. Okay, you also had this on your interview. You have to understand that this is one of the most catastrophic hurricanes. And I know we've had some after this, like Hurricane Michael, but it hits New Orleans and the levee breaks. And when the levee breaks, that leaves the city flooded. And what occurs is that most people people who are in the upper that have money were able to evacuate. But people who did not have money were not able to evacuate, and they were staying in New Orleans. And we're seeing the levees didn't hold. This increases the water. 80% of the city is flooded. The Army Corps of Engineers is going to be sued, saying that they did not build the levee strong enough to prevent the Mississippi River from flooding the city. Okay. And what will happen is FEMA is created, and FEMA is going to try to help people who've been harmed through the hurricane. And many people say there's mismanagement, that people are falsely claiming stuff. The money's not getting into the right hands. And so we're going to see some people who are in charge of FEMA resign. Hey, there is a financial crisis. We know in the Clinton administration our economy picks up, and that we see that the dot-com boom is also going to have a dot-com bust. The other thing that happens is because of that boom, we are going to see that more people are getting homes, and there's a lot of risky loans that are created called adjustable arms. And I know that sounds weird, like an adjustable arm. It's not like Inspector Gadget. An adjustable arm is a interest rate that fluctuates with the rate of inflation. So if inflation goes up, the interest rate goes up. If inflation goes down, your interest rate goes down. And so what was happening is that the economy was getting heated, and the interest rates on these homes were going up, and people could not afford the interest on their homes. And so these adjustable rate mortgages caused the housing crisis. People had to sell their homes. They could not afford it. And the home prices kept on increasing, and this led to the housing market crisis, which led to the financial crisis, because banks had loaned these money out, and banks made all of these purchases, and now the people couldn't afford it. They had to sell back their homes. Their loans couldn't be paid. The banks make these risky investments, and they failed. And so the banking industry goes down. And so our federal government, what they'll do is they're going to do the Emergency Economic Stabilization Act, and they're going to bail out the banking industry. They bought the bad investments, and they felt that they needed to keep the banks from failing, because then that led to all of everybody's assets failing as well. Okay, that's it on Bush.